The room held its breath as the music tightened like a fist and the lights burned cold against velvet air. Out of the hush stepped Jasmine Tookes in liquid gold, the glow of a new life carried like a crown. A pregnant supermodel on the temple floor of old desire, a soft rebellion that cut sharper than any jewel. Behind her, the procession gathered speed. Faces known and faces new. Wings tempered into sculpture. Lace stitched with intent, not apology. The ghost of the old empire watched from the rafters. It remembered feathers like thunder and a single narrow dream. Tonight the dream refused to fit. The bodies were many. The stories were many. Power did not whisper to the mirror. Power walked on its own 2 feet. This was not a return. This was a trial by light. Day to night. Innocence to voltage. Tenderness to steel. The brand that once sold a myth now risked a truth. That beauty can breathe and ache, and still command the room. The stage asked a hard question that would not leave with the smoke. Can a house built on fantasy survive when the world demands honesty? Can silk carry the weight of change without tearing? The beat climbed. The floor answered. The curtain learned a new language. It spoke of grace and grit, and the right to be seen without permission. The old crown loosened. The new crown did not sparkle. It pulsed. It dared. It lived. To understand the weight of that night, you have to remember where it began. Long before redemption glittered under the lights, there was empire. Sleek, relentless, and blind. In 1995, the Victoria's Secret show was born as a marketing stunt, a harmless dream with perfume on its breath. By the early 2000s, it had become a global ritual. Angels descended, wings like architecture, bodies like commandments. The crowd worshipped, and the cameras obeyed. Beauty was narrow, skin was currency, and the fantasy felt eternal. But the world changed faster than silk could stretch. The curtain began to tear. Accusations, arrogance, the echo of voices that refused to stay invisible. Ed Razek's words in 2018 sliced through the illusion. No trans, no plus size, no space for imperfection. The myth cracked under its own perfection. Ratings fell. The halo dimmed. The empire stumbled. In 2019, the show disappeared, leaving behind smoke and silence. Then came the reckoning. A new generation wanted truth, not sparkle. Leadership shifted, slogans softened, mirrors turned inward. Out went the angels. In came ambassadors, mothers, athletes, activists. Diversity wasn't decoration anymore, it was survival. And still the question hovered. Could a brand once built on exclusion learn to breathe in the open air of change? 2025 answered not with apologies, but with theater. The rebirth would not hide in whispers. It would walk in gold, pregnant and unafraid. The 2025 show was not a sequel, but a revolt wrapped in silk. After years of hesitation, the brand tore down its own altar and rebuilt it under harsher light. No more ghosts pretending progress. They wanted proof. Inclusion was no longer a press release. It had to sweat under the spotlight. The cast told the story before the music did. Bodies that once lived outside the frame now took the center. Paloma Elsesser's curves refused apology. Alex Kansani's walk burned through doubt. Mothers, athletes, trans women, veterans, all stitched into the same pulse. And there at the beginning, Jasmine Tookes, with the glow of creation under her ribs, rewriting every rule about what beauty should hide. Behind the stage, leadership had shifted from indulgence to intention. Hillary Super in command, Adam Selman at the creative helm. Less fantasy, more fire. The fabrics came from recycled dreams, the feathers from gentler wings. Sustainability whispered where vanity once shouted. Even the choreography changed. No longer just a march of symmetry, but a narrative of rebirth. Tenderness, meeting ferocity. Streetwear brushing against lace. The camera no longer chased perfection. It lingered on breath, on laughter, on skin that told stories of survival. By the time the lights dimmed, it felt less like a show than a confession. An empire crawling back into its own humanity, dressed in glitter and guilt. The stage became the confession booth. Gone was the straight line of the runway slicing the crowd in two. In its place, a living sculpture of screens, light, and movement. The designers built a landscape that breathed with the music. Shifting floors, blooming projections, smoke that pulsed like a heartbeat. Every flicker of light seemed to echo the question that haunted the show. Can spectacle become sincerity? The performance unfolded in 2 acts, day and night. Day arrived in pastel size, chiffon whispering like morning air, wings soft as promises. The music was light, almost innocent, as if the show itself were relearning how to walk. Then dusk came crawling in, and the energy thickened. Shadows folded over silk. Denim clashed with lace, sequins with cargo pants. Desire dressed itself in contradiction. By night, the stage exploded into a celestial fever dream. Metallic wings cut through fog, drones carved shapes into the air, and the models moved like constellations, remembering they were once human. Bella Hadid's mechanical wings shimmered in rhythm, each step a mix of rebellion and control. Ashley Graham emerged through golden sparks, the light kissing every curve as though it had been waiting for her shape to exist. The crowd rose, as if answering a hymn. The old fantasy of perfection didn't vanish. It was consumed, melted, reforged. The stage itself was a metaphor, daring to prove that transformation could still be beautiful, even under judgment. The faces on that stage carried the weight of 2 decades, ghosts and daughters walking side by side. Adriana Lima returned first, not as an angel, but as a witness. Her black corset shimmered with feathers that caught light like memory. She walked slower now, her gaze sharper, her body fluent in nostalgia. Alessandra Ambrosio followed, chain and silk bound in balance, smiling with the defiance of someone who had survived her own myth. The crowd roared, not because they saw perfection, but because they saw persistence. Then came the new blood. Alex Consani, fire-red and unbothered, walking like rebirth itself. Paloma Elsesser in bridal lace that moved like prayer, her body soft, yet indomitable. When she reached the end of the runway, the applause broke something open. Not hysteria, but relief. Anak Yai glowed dark gold beneath the lights, every stride a sermon on elegance. Precious Lee laughed mid-walk, breaking the spell and rebuilding it on her own terms. And the athletes, Angel Reese towering in magenta, Suni Lee spinning in silver air, bridged the worlds of sport and seduction. They didn't imitate models, they rewrote the rhythm. Beside them, the Hadid sisters shimmered in twin defiance, legacy meeting evolution. Backstage, rivalry had been replaced by mentorship. The air was heavy with sweat, perfume, and something almost sacred. Women celebrating women. For the first time, the wings didn't divide them, they held them together. Music was the bloodline of the night, each note binding the bodies to the story. Madison Beer opened the dream in a blush corset and thigh-high boots, her voice trembling between youth and defiance. Bittersweet floated through the pastel light, her melody tracing the outlines of vulnerability that the old show had always hidden. Around her, models drifted like slow-moving stars. The air itself seemed to blush. Then the rhythm cracked open. Carl G strode into silver fire, reggaeton pounding through the venue like thunder under lace. Provenza, Bichota, her voice carried sweat, heat, language, revolution. The runway turned tropical, hips and heels colliding, joy spilling over discipline. She didn't sing for approval, she sang for arrival. Twice followed, black and white, leather and lace, their choreography precise as heartbeat, strategy pulsed like adrenaline. This is for unfurled as an anthem to the women walking beside them. When Tsuyu's voice faltered, the crowd leaned closer, not to judge, but to feel. Imperfection had finally been allowed to breathe. And then Missy Elliott shattered the calm. Gold jacket, sequined rage. Work it, lose control. Get freak on. The models didn't walk, they marched. The floor became a riot of glitter and movement. Confetti rained like absolution. For a few blazing minutes, empowerment wasn't a slogan. It had a beat, a body, a roar. By dawn, the headlines had already begun to split like glass. Praise and doubt marched hand in hand. Some critics wrote that Victoria's Secret had finally evolved. Others said it had only learned how to mimic evolution. Still, everyone was watching. Fashion editors called it a resurrection wrapped in restraint. The first show in years, with a pulse that felt human. They saw intention in every shimmer, story in every walk. They wrote about Jasmine Tookes as if she were a prophecy, about Paloma's gown as if it had rewritten anatomy. Words like diversity, redemption, rebirth spilled across the feeds. But the cynics were waiting too. They argued that the spectacle still sold the same fantasy, only this time it wore moral language as perfume, empowerment as marketing, inclusion as costume. They reminded readers that real progress isn't a catwalk, it's a contract, a paycheck, a choice. Business analysts loved the numbers. Engagement was record-breaking. The shoppable stream turned lingerie into lightning sales. Every click, a confession. Every purchase, a prayer disguised as data. Social media moved faster than commentary could catch. TikTok loops of Angel Reese's spin, clips of Missy's finale, screenshots of Tsuyu's apology. The internet turned critique into choreography. Some laughed, some cried, some just watched the glitter fall in silence. Whatever the verdict, the show had done what few could still manage in the chaos of 2025. It made the world stop scrolling, if only for a heartbeat. The audience became the pulse of the story. Inside the venue, applause came in waves, not forced, but startled, raw. When Jasmine Tookes appeared, the sound was disbelief turned into devotion. A pregnant woman on the altar of glamour. For a second, everyone forgot the brand's sins and simply breathed with her. Online, it was chaos wrapped in color. TikTok loops of Angel Reese's stride flooded the feed. Hashtags, VS comeback, new angels, climbed the algorithm like wildfire. Some users compared screenshots from 2005 to 2025, old angels against new realities. The contrast was the story itself. Evolution caught on replay. Older fans felt nostalgia mixed with unease. They missed the danger, the spectacle, the fantasy that never apologized. This new world is softer, one wrote. But maybe softness is the new rebellion. Gen Z didn't care about nostalgia. They cared about reflection. To them, seeing Paloma, Alex, and Anak meant the mirror had finally widened. Karol G's segment trended across Latin America. Twice ignited entire corners of Asia. When Tsuyu apologized for her strained voice, fans defended her like family. The show had crossed borders again, not as a symbol of perfection, but of connection. And then the silence, the last bow, the falling pink confetti. For one suspended breath, the world stopped talking. The applause came not for fantasy but for courage, for the simple act of walking without permission. When the glitter settled and the lights went cold, the conversation deepened. The media dissected the show like an autopsy on beauty itself. Think pieces spilled across digital pages, asking if redemption could coexist with profit, if empowerment could survive once sold in satin. The 2025 show had become a mirror for a culture exhausted by its own contradictions. For years, Victoria's Secret built its kingdom on a single fantasy: flawless, sculpted, untouchable. But that night cracked the mirror. A pregnant body, a trans body, a body that did not shrink to fit. Jasmine Tookes, glowing with life. Paloma Elsesser in feathers like armor. Alex Consani walking as if rebirth had a rhythm. They weren't ornaments anymore. They were origins. Critics called it, "The night beauty learned how to breathe." Others warned that representation without reform was just performance. Yes, the images moved people, but the machine beneath them still hummed for profit. Empowerment in high definition, inclusion in limited edition. Still, for those watching from small screens, something shifted. A girl somewhere saw herself and didn't flinch. A boy understood that grace has no single shape. Change doesn't always roar, it flickers first. That flicker burned through silk that night. It was messy, commercial, imperfect, but it was visible. And sometimes visibility is the revolution the world allows first. Beneath the applause, the machine was still humming. Empowerment had found its price tag. The 2025 show wasn't only a cultural gesture, it was strategy disguised as salvation. Every light flare, every close-up, every pause in the soundtrack was timed to the rhythm of commerce. Behind the veil of inclusivity, algorithms whispered. The live stream turned lingerie into instant gratification. One click, and the fabric of transformation could arrive at your door. Numbers soared. Sales spiked. The boardroom cheered. Inclusivity, it turned out, converted beautifully. Diversity was no longer rebellion. It was product design. Every curve, every story, another SNKU. Yet that paradox gave the night its power. Victoria's Secret had learned that contradiction sells better than perfection. People didn't want fantasy anymore. They wanted to buy redemption. The company gave them both, a revolution wrapped in a shopping cart. Adam Selman fought to keep a pulse of art beneath the strategy, threading sincerity between the data points. But marketing always wins the encore. The message was clear. The brand's soul and its revenue shared the same heartbeat now. Critics called it capitalism's cleverest costume. But beneath the cynicism was something undeniable. People were still talking, still watching, still buying. Even when progress is packaged, the conversation it sparks can't be fully contained. For better or worse, the brand had made equality fashionable, and profit had found a new perfume. The past hovered like perfume that never fades. Every spotlight in 2025 carried the echo of wings long gone, the ghosts of angels carved into the brand's DNA. The new show tried to move beyond them, yet the shadow remained. Seductive, heavy, impossible to forget. In the early years, perfection had been gospel. Bodies sculpted by discipline, smiles rehearsed to the millimeter, desire choreographed for the male gaze. Those women weren't human. They were constellations wearing heels. The world applauded because the fantasy was easier than the truth. Now the illusion cracked, but it didn't die. It changed shape. The same choreography, slower, softer, conscious, returned with new meaning. The gaze no longer looked down from above. It turned inward. When Paloma walked, the room didn't worship. It recognized. When Jasmine glowed, it wasn't myth. It was mortality made luminous. The nostalgia was electric. Some missed the arrogance of the old show. its unapologetic hunger. Others found this new tenderness unsettling, as if the empire had learned to whisper instead of roar. But perhaps that was the point. The fantasy wasn't gone. It had learned humility. And when Missy Elliott shouted, "We run this," it wasn't rebellion against men. It was reclamation from memory. The same stage, the same glitter, but a different heartbeat. One that finally belonged to the women wearing it. When the final note dissolved and the lights dimmed, a hush replaced the spectacle. Backstage smelled of sweat, perfume, and quiet disbelief. Models hugged, makeup smudged, tears streaking through shimmer. It wasn't triumph, not exactly. Something gentler, heavier. Relief. Interviews trickled out like confessions. Alex Consani said she'd felt the ghosts behind her and walked anyway. Paloma admitted she cried before her cue, whispering to herself that softness could be power. Jasmine Tookes, glowing and exhausted, said the line that would headline every article: "I wasn't walking for perfection. I was walking for wholeness." The next morning, spreadsheets replaced sequins. Marketing teams celebrated metrics, views, sales, conversions. The show had done its job. The brand had resurrected its relevance. But beneath the numbers was a quieter victory, one that couldn't be graphed. For 2 hours, the world had stared at difference and called it beautiful. Critics kept dissecting sincerity from profit, authenticity from artifice. Maybe both were true. Maybe sincerity needs a stage. Maybe progress can wear mascara and still matter. What lingered wasn't just glitter, it was recognition. Imperfect, commodified, alive. Beauty, stripped of its obedience, learning to stand without apology. As the confetti turned to dust, the brand that once sold fantasy discovered something rarer than desire. It found relevance, fragile but real, pulsing beneath the noise. That was the rebirth. Quiet, flawed, unshakable. The afterglow lingered like smoke that refused to rise. Outside the venue, rain began to fall. Soft, deliberate, cleansing. Inside, the glitter clung to the floor like memory. The night was over, but its echo didn't fade. It hummed in the bones of those who watched, who walked, who dared. Victoria's Secret had not rewritten the story of womanhood, but it had turned the page. What once glorified fantasy now flirted with truth. What once demanded perfection now celebrated presence. In a world addicted to illusion, the mere act of showing reality, even dressed in sequins, felt revolutionary. The brand's redemption wasn't pure. It never could be. It was stitched together from contradiction, from the threads of guilt and glitter, capitalism and courage. But that perhaps was its strange honesty. Beauty was never about being flawless. It was about surviving the light. As the last spotlight dimmed, the runway disappeared into shadow. The empire that once crowned angels now stood bare, human, trembling, and alive. Somewhere in that silence, a truth unfolded without words. The future of desire doesn't belong to fantasy anymore. It belongs to whoever dares to stand in the light and call herself real. And in that moment, beneath the dying echo of applause, Victoria's Secret finally learned how to breathe.